What is up, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer, Mike Goolsby, and it's the Mike Goolsby Show. It's been a minute, I think, since Mike, the National Signing Day show we did, talking about the last class, or probably did something after the bowl game, probably, right?
Yeah, I think so. Either way, Mike, it's been too long.
Been
Too
too long. Yeah,
long.
I get people asking me all the damn time, "Where's Mike Goolsby? What Mike Goolsby?" I'm like, I thought you guys liked Mike Singer, but apparently not as much as Mike Goolsby. So, um,
No, I've been trying to keep abreast. Yeah, I've been popping in and watching all the shows, and you turned into a hell of a host, Mike. So it's good to be with you again.
I appreciate it, Mike. What's your hoodie? What's your hoodie there for YouTube audience? State champions.
Oh, this is my high school alma mater, Joliet Catholic. Uh, I'm recently went into the Hall of Fame over there, but you can see here, Mike.
Yep.
I think there's 15 state championships, so it's a big time program.
How many were you a part of?
One,
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
yeah.
It was last fall you were inducted into their Hall of Fame, I believe.
Again, yeah, something like that. Yeah, time's flying, man.
Yeah.
Time is flying. So yeah,
No
they
doubt.
loaded me up on gear when I went back home. So very appreciative of that.
Yeah, love it. All right, well, listen, Notre Dame fans, if you're watching us on YouTube, whether you're live with us or you're watching back, make sure you hit the thumbs up to help support what we're doing here at Blue and Gold. Subscribe to our channel, drop comments on YouTube, drop super chat. We'll get to that live. There's a lot to talk about. Notre Dame fans are angry today after the On3 rankings update. We'll talk about that, but certainly Marcus Freeman's first coaching staff is where we're going to kick off with Mr. Goolsby. And also, if you're listening back via podcast, appreciate you as well. Leave us a nice review on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. So, Mr. Goolsby, Marcus Freeman had more hires than he probably thought he was going to have to make. You had unexpected assistants leaving in Mike Elston to Michigan. You had Lance Taylor to Boston College and John McNulty. Um, I might have just messed that up. Lance Taylor to Louisville, John McNulty to Boston College. So yeah, he had to do a little bit more than he thought. What'd you think about the rankings? Excuse me, I'm reading I'm reading comments now and trying to talk at the same time. What'd you think about his new hires?
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of transition with a lot has happened. Truly, Coach Kelly takes off. It looks like everybody's going to stay on board. It's kind of a testament to Coach Freeman. And then slowly over the coming weeks, there's some chinks in the armor, right? There's some holes we're trying to plug. So kudos to Coach Freeman for kind of keeping it together. I think a big concern for fans, Mike, was the recruiting in terms of, if we've got some coaching vacancies, how's that going to affect recruiting? But with Marcus Freeman being vocal and he's going to lead from the front, he is the lead recruiter. Me personally, it wasn't a huge concern that there was some coaching vacancies or some continued transition there, because he is such an elite and prominent recruiter. So it shaped up to be great. The biggest difference was the age of the guys. Lance Taylor leaving is a younger coach. He's a running backs coach. I think as far as like the X's and O's and coaching football, Mike, it's like you kind of rely on your back's instincts. There's just not a ton of coaching that goes into that position. There really isn't. So it's just, can he recruit? We'll check that box. Losing Coach Elston and losing Coach McNulty, that was a little bit more concerning to me. And we talked about this months ago when Freeman was hired, was just that he's young. So to have some older guys on staff like an Elston or like a McNulty with their prior coaching experience, that just could help kind of prop Freeman up. So that was a little bit of a concern. But the guys that he brought in are super enthusiastic, very young recruiters. And to me, that was like why you hired Freeman, was to kind of break through on the recruiting trail. more so than anything. So that just kind of keeps with that theme. And Al Golden, um, back, this is, 20 years ago when I was still playing ball, I was at some workout and there was a couple, I spent some time with a couple guys that played linebacker at Virginia, and they were bragging about Al Golden. And this was 20 years ago, like Al's the man, etc. So like I knew about Al Golden, and I'm like, he almost had legend status to these kids 20 years ago. So hopefully Al Golden can kind of replicate that gray hair factor that you might have lost with McNulty and Elston.
And I would say with McNulty out, you bring in Harry Heastand, someone who,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, someone who Tommy Rees said this was the guy we had to have. So, I even would mention Jared Parker, who was offensive coordinator and title, but Neil Brown, the West Virginia head coach, was calling the plays there. So, I don't,
Hmm.
but still, like Gerard Parker, plenty of experience. And I think Harry Heastand can kind of be that John McNulty. And I think Al Golden
Sure.
becomes your different than Mike Elston, but you know, we've talked about this a lot, Mike. Marcus Freeman as a first-time head coach, like he definitely needed someone who has a lot of head coach experience. Al Golden hasn't been a defensive coordinator in like almost 20 years, and part of that is because he's been a head coach, for Temple and
Yep.
Miami. I mean, would you say Al Golden was the biggest or best hire for Notre Dame?
I want to say Al Washington's the biggest hire to me, just because I don't think and Elston's a great coach, was a great recruiter. I don't think there's going to be any drop off in terms of, and it might be a bump up in terms of recruiting at that position. So, and I also like when we kind of at the end of these seasons, at the end of our last couple seasons, like you take a step back and be like, you look at the roster, where are where do the holes still exist? And it's at, again, outside. So it's either at the receiver position or it's at the defensive back position. And then kind of third is like your interior defensive lineman in terms of becoming an elite program and having those specific body types, those 300 plus pound interior guys. And I feel like hopefully Coach Washington can help us land a few of those. So I think that to me was a bigger hire. It felt like Al Golden was kind of a given throughout the process. You just had to wait for the NFL season to play itself out. Um, but yeah, I see the upside with Washington, and it seems like the um, biggest hire as far as I'm concerned.
I like all of the coaches, but I'm also,
Sure.
what's the term you give me, Mike? Eternal optimist.
Yeah.
So I like all of them. My favorite is probably Chancey Stuckey, just from what I've seen from this guy on the recruiting front so far, and the project he has for receiver recruiting and rebuilding that room. He's it's a I think
No,
you
you're
make
not
an argument.
wrong.
Yeah,
You are an eternal optimist, and that's the way to be. But you're also you always take the layups when it comes to these things. Like you take the layups. Chancey, Coach Stuckey's a layup, Mike.
layup
It
for
just
my
is.
favorite hire.
Yeah, it's like a lazy answer, dude. It's a
How?
lazy answer. Well, because the problems in that wide receiver room are so glaring,
Oh, so
you
there's
know.
only one way to go up, or there's only one way to go down.
Yeah. It's just kind of an obvious answer, but that's okay. Yeah, and I would agree. It is a big hire, but you can't do much worse than Coach Alexander, right? I mean, the bar's pretty low there. So he's kind of starting at the ground floor. There's 5 or 6 kids in that room, and off we go. So, um, but I don't look at. We were going to talk about pressure, Mike. Which coach has the most pressure on him? And somewhat ironically, I think that Coach Stuckey has the least amount of pressure, again, because that bar is so low in terms of the performance of the wide receivers, the way we've recruited these kids, the way we've held on to these kids and have them not transfer out. So, um, yeah, I almost feel like there's not a lot of pressure on him. I think that, go ahead.
I would just I my pushback on that would be they have to sign a really good receiver class, and that is like you talked about those three positions: receiver, quarterback, and cornerback, and interior defensive line. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
receiver's been in a position of struggle, and he's an inexperienced coach, at least on paper. Tommy Reese recently said, "Hey, he's I don't see as inexperienced because of all the football he knows, but tomato, tomato." But what about quarterback? Where does quarterback fit into those positions that Notre Dame struggled at? When you mentioned interior D line, receiver, and corner.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a great point you make, Mike.
I do that from time to time.
Well, yeah, from time to time. Um, we haven't landed a stud, right? We haven't landed a no-brainer 5-star, but our quarterback play has been like, I mean, I guess sufficient is a word. I mean, it's been sufficient. We haven't had a game changer, first round draft pick, kind of Heisman contender consistently for a very long time. But again, it's been sufficient. So it hasn't been like as glaring to me as the wide receiver position or in particular the cornerback position. So I know that we're in talks with a couple young studs, namely one in Dante Moore, who I've watched his film a couple different times, and I think I texted you I've become more of a fan of his with each viewing of his film. I see things more and more things that I really like, so that's interesting. But I want to just kind of put a bow on that pressure conversation. Um, I think Coach Mickens has a lot of pressure on him because he's kind of like a holdover of that staff. And real quick, we can get to Dante, but
Yeah,
he's a
yeah.
holdover, so he's not like a part of this, new clique that's coming in. And he's got a lot. He's got his work cut out for him over there as well too. So I think he's kind of on the. I hate to say use the term hot seat, but there's a lot of pressure on him in terms of developing some of these young kids, etc.
Yes, I think I'm with you on the like. This is a big year for him. This is year 3 at Notre Dame, but also the holdover thing. Yeah, I remember Mike. He went to middle school and high school with Marcus Freeman. They're like best friends. So I think he's got a job on that staff no matter what. Mike, by the way, what are you drinking?
Oh, just water tonight.
Dude, you know what I'm
Yeah.
drinking? Drinking sparkling water. So
Mm,
look at us. We did not plan that.
yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, be honest with you, they're having a for the spring game. I talked to you about this. They're having kind of a they've got a nice little agenda for ex players like myself, and I'm like, man, if I go out there, I might try and drop like 10, 20 pounds, before I get out there. So it's like going to a class reunion.
In a month from
So I'm
now?
gonna try and. Oh, sure.
3.5 weeks. You can do it?
Oh,
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm
easily.
sorry. 2 months. I'm sorry. I was thinking March.
Yeah,
It's like
but no,
7 weeks.
you could drop 10 pounds in a month.
Yeah, go
That's not
quit
very
keto.
difficult.
Go quit keto.
Yeah, it's not real difficult. Yeah, so I'll be trying to lay off the beers, it's yeah. So anyways,
All right.
that's
Well,
where I'm at.
here's a little off the cuff question.
Okay.
I mean, I I I would imagine they're going pretty far back, inviting all sorts of Notre Dame football alumni for this, right? Let's say past 40 years or so. I don't know. Who would you most want to see there? Who would you want to talk to? Maybe ask some questions. And is there anyone you don't want to see there, Mr. Goolsby? This is obviously not a planned question for you.
So who would I most be excited to see? Um, I've met a lot of I've met Joe Montana, I've met Jerome Bettis. This is a great story. Maybe not great, but we played in this game in Japan. Did you ever hear about this, Mike?
Mm-mm.
I think this is 2006. Yeah, 2006, 2007. They took a bunch of ex Notre Dame football players, and we had a tryout, etc. And Lou Holtz coached the game, and we went over to Japan and we played their like national team. So basically, like they play tackle football over there, and it's actually called the XFL. You could look this all up. And so they had a tryout, and then we go like we had a tryout, and then we had like 2 days of 2 days. Then we get on a plane and we flew over to Tokyo. We played in the Tokyo Dome. Tim Brown was like a guest coach. Chris Zorich was on the staff, and that was a really interesting experience to get a chance to like play for Coach Holtz. I was fortunate enough to be named captain for that game. So like bar trivia, Mike, who was the captain for like Lou Holtz's last game? It was your boy over here. It was like, so and Tim Brown after the game, he was like, "Why aren't you still playing football?" Because I was 2, 3, 4 years out of getting bounced out of the NFL. So I have it
Come
all on
on,
DVD.
dude. Look at
Yeah.
this. You had an interception?
Oh, I killed it, dude. I had a tackle on 4th and 1, and I swear to you, man. So I was like, when we were over there, we all got drunk as a skunk, to try and like sleep on the plane before we took off or we departed South Bend. That didn't work. So I was kind of up the whole flight. And then I never left the hotel. They put us up at the Ritz Carlton. I never left the hotel because I was like, I sat there. I was like, how many times have I thought about playing ball? And at that point, I'm 26 years old. Like it's still very, very much a part of my being. I was like, I've never thought about going to Japan. I'm like, to hell with Tokyo. Like I want to focus on this game. And I wanted to get MVP. Had I scored on that interception, I think I would have won the MVP. But great experience. So yeah, that was an opportunity for me to answer your question. That was an opportunity for me to a lot of these legendary guys like Zorich and Tim Brown and that. But who would I be excited to see? Um, an ex, teammate of mine, Derek Curry. We were co-captains together. I love Derek, and I haven't seen him in a number of years. So he said he's going to be out there. So I'd like to see guys like that, guys that I played with, that you sort of fall out of touch with, but the bond's still there. So hopefully Gary Gotze, Notre Dame fans remember Gary Gotze. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. It'd be great to see him.
Like, that was an amazing story. I don't know how I didn't know that.
Well,
That's
Lou would
amazing.
have.
Oh, Lou
Yeah,
would
no, it
have.
was it
Lou
was
would
a
have
it
known
was,
more about it than you.
yeah, and I was there. Yeah, it was yeah, it was and I went out, left the hotel like I think it was the night before the game or whatever. I was like, all right, fine, I'll go out. And I ended up going to like TGI Fridays or something, like, quite the tourist. But yeah, didn't get a chance to see much of Tokyo, but we did end up winning the game. So that was very, very cool.
Yeah, 19-3. I love it. Just because I always like to throw a softball up there for Goolsby if you want to get spicy. Is there anyone you don't want to see? You don't have to answer. We can move along.
I could tell you this. In my 4.5 years at Notre Dame, there was only one teammate, maybe two, that I didn't love and would take a bullet for. God's honest truth. So like, yeah, but I
That's a
mean,
lot of
we're
players you
talking
played
20.
with. So,
Oh, you love them all. I mean, they're your teammates. So there's only a couple guys where I was just kind of like, F that guy. But outside of that, no, I'd be excited to see all of them.
okay.
And
Anything
hopefully,
else?
hopefully that becomes kind of a trend with Coach Freeman, and they're opening up practice to us and all of that. So it's going to be. And my thing is, I haven't been back to South Bend in years. I have a kid that I trained who's a walk on over there, so it'd be great to see him. But I look at it like as a football alum, if Coach Freeman's going to take this step to try and reconnect with former players, like I definitely want to meet him halfway, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. All right. If you're just joining us live here on YouTube, watching back, um, just a quick note. Site move special at blueandgold.com here on our website. $1 for the first year of premium access. Here's what the sign up page looks like. Some of this text down here is basically saying, I finally learned this after a minute. If you subscribe and then cancel like pretty much right away, then you lose your membership. You can't sign up for $1 for a year and then and then dip out and get the rest of the year. So sign up, mark down in your tell Siri to remind you when your renewal is, and we really do feel like by the year up by the end of your first year you will be wanting to stick around at blueandgold.com. Mike, anything else with the coaches? Do we feel good there? Do you want to give a letter grade for for how Freeman did in his first
I
year?
think it's too early, but I think it's too early to have a letter grade, but we're going to take some lumps. Well, I guess this is falls into the coaching conversation categorically. One of the downsides to Elston taking off and having some more transition, bringing in coach, is just the timing of it all, in terms of like spring ball is literally right around the corner. And these guys have been recruiting their asses off. And then it's like, okay, now we got to switch gears and we got to throw a practice together. So there's going to be a certain degree of like discombobulation as they you got a first time head coach. I mean, it's not that it shouldn't be messy, but I do think that we should sort of temper our expectations of what we want to see coming out of this spring. Schematically, Mike, I do think with that younger staff, that kind of energy, new coach, everybody's got a new lease on life. I do think you'll see a lot of competition periods. And there's so many young kids that have enrolled early. I think that would really be the no-brainer approach to spring ball, is let's just compete our asses off, and then these coaches can take that information and work on the scheme between now and camp.
Notre Dame fans, if you're with us live here and you have some questions, drop them in the live chat. I'm saving a few of them that I thought were good so far, but only way to guarantee that we answer your question is by dropping a super chat. We actually have a quick word from a sponsor who is also a big name Notre Dame a former player. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video, and I'm going to hope it works.
What's up, Notre Dame fans? It's Reggie Brooks. I'm here to tell you I'm meeting my biggest fans on Meat League. Let's talk Notre Dame football, past and present. A portion of the proceeds will go to the Hostess Heroes Foundation, and one lucky winner will win 2 tickets to the BYU Notre Dame game in Las Vegas. So download Meat League onto your iPhones and meet me at Meat League.
He missed his block. He forced Rick right, and it's like ran out of options real quick.
So that's Meat League. Yeah, Reggie Brooks, Patrick Engel, and Tyler Horka at Blue and Gold did their Irish Huddle podcast today. Nana Asafo-Mensah, Notre Dame Rising junior defensive lineman, he's a part of it. So kind of a cool thing there where it's like a cameo, but it's like live, so you can talk with them live. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. Meet Leet, lots of Notre Dame guys on there, past and present players. Goolsby, we got to get you on there. People would love to have Goolsby.
Between that and trying to sell some merch, yeah, we'll look into it.
Dude, Goolsby, you're a businessman. That's what I know for sure, man. You always have some ideas for some different
Well,
stuff.
everybody's selling merch. I think if we came up with a cool design, I think it's hopefully people might be interested, but we'll see if we ever cross that bridge.
Yeah, we got nothing but time, right? Hopefully. Mike, you want to talk some 2023 quarterback recruiting?
Yeah, let's get it. Just a little bit. We'll touch on it.
Yeah. So we'll pop on here for YouTube. Dante Moore film. What do you think about him when you see him on tape? This is the quarterback recruit who I have a prediction in for land at Notre Dame. From Detroit, Martin Luther King High School, 5-star according to the On3 consensus ranking. What do you think, Mike?
Well, Mike, can you get into, and if you can't, just tell me, but can you get into what led to you putting in that crystal ball prediction? Like the conversation you had, something you heard?
You want me to do that now, or do you want to break them down first?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's really not super complicated. You talk to people at Notre Dame and kind of sources around the program, and folks feel good. And the conversations about the prediction come about, and just again, folks felt good. And then you look at what was happening at other programs. He's looking at LSU and Miami, some of these schools down south. I don't see it. I think it's Notre Dame, Michigan, Michigan State, or Penn State. Did I say Ohio State? Them too. But I don't think the Buckeyes are super involved. The Spartans took a quarterback commit already. Michigan lost Josh Gaddis, which is why he's now considering Miami more because Gaddis is at Miami. So you just kind of look at it from both sides. Like, Notre Dame sources feel good, and Moore has been to Notre Dame a bunch. He's got a great connection with Tommy Rees. And then some of these other programs are faltering a little bit. So that's my thought there, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so and I'll tell you this, you're the glass half full guy. I'm the glass half empty guy. So when I sit down to look at, some new offer kid or some new commit or what have you, I always look at it like from a negative perspective, like, would I even offer this kid? That's where I start. So like, I like it from a hypercritical perspective. So like my first thought on Dante Moore was like, his release looks kind of screwy to me. I don't like his release. And then I'm watching it more and more, and it's quick as hell. The launch point's a little bit low, but I'm like, it's so quick. It's perfect for that kind of RPO offense that Coach Rees likes to dabble with. Great size, very competent size. Athletic enough, but doesn't look to run. Like he does a lot of that. And you hate to, Pat Mahomes is such a lazy comparison, but like, he'll step in the pocket, then he drifts to his left to keep his eyes downfield. He's got real loose hips, so he can snap that ball. Like he doesn't need a perfect platform to kind of throw off of. He's just got that kind of whip of an arm. So it's you could see why he's a 5-star kid. And based off everything you hear about him off the field, leadership, intangibles, things like that, it really, really seems to make sense. What's also, somebody can correct me on this, but I believe isn't Jerome Bettis is from Detroit, right?
Yes.
So, and I feel like Jerome's gotten around the program a little bit more. Got a great Jerome Bettis story.
Yeah, they could be students together.
What's that?
Well, I think Jerome's wrapping up soon, but yeah.
But I mean, that's just that stuff's fun to talk about from a fan perspective. Like, is that serendipitous? Like an all-time great from Detroit, and then you maybe got this 5-star kid coming. It's just fun to think about. But I see it. I see it with him on film. I haven't got into what's the other kid, Chris
Vizina.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at his film yet.
Well, we can change that. I think I got it somewhere.
Okay.
I think it's
nothing beats watching film live on your iPhone on a 1.5-inch screen.
All right, let's see if I can't.
The best. Ooh, that's even. Yeah, we're going down to 1 inch.
I got you, Mike. All right. So this is Chris Vizina on 3. Their rankings update. They actually moved him past Moore. So you got 3 5-star quarterbacks at the top. This is kind of confusing, but so On3 has their own rankings, and then there's ESPN 24/7 and Rivals. You put those 4 together and make a baby, and it's the On3 consensus. So Moore's an On3 consensus 5-star, but On3 has him as a 4-star. So hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, Moore's a 5-star. But On3 did their own rankings again and had Vizina move past Moore. So all right. So this is your first time watching them. What do you think, Mike? So you can kind of watch them live here and get your first thoughts. This is
completely different delivery from the get-go. I don't like that either. That big windup where he's got that Dante Culpepper, where he brings that ball back like that. But we'll see. I mean, that's a great run. Where's this kid play, Mike? Where's he from?
It's about 5A ball in Alabama.
Okay.
So it's decent competition, but some of these kids on defense look very small and unathletic. So like he's at a Christian school, but still pretty good competition in Alabama. But certainly you see the wheels a little bit more And like playing comparison of a stylistic at quarterback is Josh Allen for him.
I'm just watching. How tall is he?
6'4",
Listed.
6'3.5", 6'4".
Yeah.
I'm sorry for podcast audience. This is much more geared
So
towards
I would
YouTube.
say, I've watched quite a bit of. One of my best friends is a diehard Bills fan, so I've kind of become a Bills fan via proxy. I would say that this kid, ironically, is like more refined than Josh Allen. Josh Allen does so many things, even in his third or fourth year in the NFL. It's like, man, that was goofy as hell. So this kid looks to be a little bit more refined, but not nearly as twitchy as honestly, like if anybody remembers Ryan Mallett, remember Ryan Mallett that played at Arkansas? I think it was at Arkansas.
Patriots. Yep.
Just that big, huge, strong arm. I can see that, like with this, the way he kind of uncorks that ball.
Mobile Ryan Mallett.
That's who.
Mallett was a statue.
Yeah, well, he was also like 6'7", right?
Right.
But this kid. He looks. And this is just me watching it. He looks like he's heavy in a good way, like stout. Like he has heavy feet, like big hands. He doesn't look as twitchy as Dante Moore does to me, in any capacity. So looks a little bit long strider. I like them both, but yeah, if I had to pick, I'd take Dante over this kid, because if you can't protect this kid, I think he might struggle a little bit more than Dante would, just with this kind of spontaneity. So that's my take. Both great players.
I mean,
but this kid's much more of a big arm kid. And a lot of these runs where you're seeing, like, that's not realistic at a Power 5 level. You understand?
Yeah. If
this kid's going to run for 20 yards on a random scramble, I feel like Dante's going to step up, slide out, and keep his eyes downfield, which is what you'd prefer. Sorry, Mike.
I was going to have a long pause there before I spoke again. If you put on the board Vizina, Dante Moore, or prime Tom Brady, all I got to say is give me Steve Angeli.
That's right. I knew it was coming.
Or Joe Alt. Joe Alt played
quarterback. If Angeli, I was just going to say, if Angeli gets hurt, we'll sub in Joe Alt, and off we go.
And then Dante Moore can go in at quarterback.
Yeah, then we'll clone, for the fans at home, we'll clone Rocco Spindler so he can play right guard and left tackle. Perfect. Yeah. All right, moving on, Mike.
Yeah. All right, well, let's see what we have next to talk about. Running back conversation.
Yeah.
Chris Tyree, Logan Diggs. After a couple of fantastic years of Kyren Williams for Notre Dame's running back room, new face. And curious your thoughts, because, like I said, they are different styles of backs. Who would you have as your lead carrier for this upcoming season, Mike?
Let's talk about styles. And we'll maybe swap out the term or the word style for skill sets.
Okay.
Right? So watching Kyren, which to me was it was truly his breakout year, was kind of last year, because he made some great runs just based off of ability, balance, toughness, heart. There was nothing there, and he was just gutting out yards, breaking tackles, whatever. And then Kyren was having success with that, and then it looked as though Tyree started to kind of model that same running style. Stop, start, wide base, a little bit of shake. That's not Tyree's style of ball. So put that to the side. I'm a big fan of Tyree just because of that elite speed, what he did at the opening. It's like the fastest kid there at these premier kind of showcase event via Nike. Big fan of his. There's a lot I'm going to say here, Mike, so I'm trying to keep myself on task here. I don't think that Chris Tyree can be your bell cow 20-plus carry a game. I don't think he's going to be asked to do that. Logan Diggs, looks like Ezekiel Elliott. He's got like the prototypical body type measurables for a running back. Logan Diggs looks the part. So based off of body type, I would say that Logan Diggs might get the majority of the carries, Mike. But in terms of touches, because there's a difference, right? So in terms of catches, total touches, return yards, etc., I feel like Tyree is going to be really, really fun, and this should be a breakout year for him. One of the biggest reasons is during spring ball, there's such limited numbers at the wide receiver positions that they're probably going to be, and I don't know if this is new information or not, but they're going to cross-train Tyree at that kind of a slot wide receiver, create some really unique mismatches with linebackers and safeties, whatever, because not a lot of people at the Division I level are going to be able to run with Chris Tyree if he's fully healthy. He wasn't fully healthy last year, which is going to hurt his chances for coaches to truly. I can't build a game plan, or I can't build an offense around a kid that sprains his toe and he's a lesser player because of it. Being part of, Jerome Bettis. We're talking about Jerome Bettis. Part of the position of a running back is you've got to be able to play dinged up. You've got to be able to play hurt, and trust with a new coaching staff. Tyree's going to have a difficult time getting them to fully buy in. If you sprain a toe and then you start, it affects your performance. But that's okay. And I also think like training kids, there's certain kids that are like track type athletes, and then there's certain kids that are football players. Tyree to me is like a track type athlete. And if they've got the littlest twinge in their Achilles tendon or the slightest little pull in their quadricep, it gets in their head. It's like, you could drive a Toyota Camry across the country, and it's like if a Ferrari has like one little thing wrong with it, it's like it's in the shop, right? That's where I'm at.
Dude, did you just pull that out of your ass? That little analogy?
Oh, the Ferrari thing?
That was great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like, so what are you going to trust? What is that coach? What vehicle is coach going to trust for a cross-country road trip? He's going to a Toyota something. It's like, it's not the flashiest, but it does everything really well. Great dependability, gas mileage, safety, etc. That Ferrari might be fun, but it's like, well, dang, if we get one check engine light, like we can't drive it.
Yeah, but what you're saying, you're not trying to turn this into a Tyree Bash Fest. You start off by saying you love him. The Ferrari has its place too, man. That's that's what you're saying. You got a 2-car garage here, might as well use it.
Ooh, I like that. And then we don't want to forget about Estime. And then the other thing that we talk about, the backs, Tyree versus Diggs, how they complement one another. And I think I've maybe told you this off record, but I thought that Tyree was more physically gifted than Kyron was. But so much of what Kyron made, let's hear me out. So much of what, and we'll see how physically gifted Kyron is come this combine, right? Is he going to run 4.4 something? Because when Tyree goes to the combine, he's going to run 4.3 something. He has elite speed. So much of this conversation with these backs is dependent on the offensive line, coach Heastan, etc. So Tyree is a home run hitter. I think teams are going to fear that outside zone. There should be some cutbacks if Jared Patterson starts moving people. So we should definitely see the workload be. I think you're just as likely to see Estime and Diggs split carries, and then Tyree's out there as a gadget guy, wide receiver, slot type guy, because that's how he's going to make his money in the NFL, right? And that's how I would sell it to him. So I think you'll see a 3-headed monster, and so much of this depends on how the offensive line comes together with Coach Heastan.
Yeah. I really like Chris Tyree. I loved him as a recruit. I never thought he was a 5-star because I never thought he was like a every down back. But when I remember seeing him in person as a recruit, and then seeing him, at Notre Dame, he seems like a one cut and go guy. I don't think he's got
the wiggle, the balance that Kyron does.
Wiggle. Yeah, I don't think he's like a twitchy athlete.
He is a twitchy athlete. He is a twitchy athlete, but I think
in terms of acceleration, but I don't know, man. Like I don't see him as like a
He won't get dirty
technician
yards. He
as a
won't
route
get.
runner.
You don't.
I don't. No, I think
Okay,
he
we'll
can
see.
give me a 5-yard out. Boom. I think he'll be really good at that. Like I think Avery Davis has. Maybe this is just me because I'm on the Avery Davis hype train. Like I really like him at the slot. Like I think he's a darn good route runner. I don't know, something that Tyree will have to train at. We'll see.
But then this is the fun stuff. This is what gets us through the offseason, Mike. So the handcuffs are off, the training wheels are off of Coach Reese and his ability to call plays, scheme things up. So we saw in the Oklahoma State game, we threw the ball 58 times or whatever it was. So, and you could do a lot. I'm just saying you could do a lot with Tyree if he starts out in the backfield and we've got split backs and we're in 21 personnel and then he walks out. Safety's got to come down. So now Michael Mayer's one-on-one. There's so much flexibility and creativity that a kid like Tyree can afford a coach like Reese without, again, the constraints of Bayou Brian, looking over his shoulder.
What about some 22 personnel this season? I mean, if Notre Dame is, not as strong at the receiver position, and you got great tight ends and running backs, what about some 22?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, it's all maybe not 22, but maybe more 12, maybe more 11.
Maybe 12 with Tyree in the slot.
Yeah. So it's 12 with an asterisk. It's going to be 22 with an asterisk. But I was brutalized by Norm Chow and USC's offense way back when, the Carson Palmers, Matt Leinerts, Reggie Bushes, you name it. And so much of what they did was like zone boot. And I'm a huge fan of zone boot offense. And like with these quarterbacks, with it, whether it be Pine or whether it be Buckner, I mean, if you get him on a boot, it's like he's got a 1-2 read, and then he pulls it down and runs. It's almost unstoppable. And then you get a home run threat like a Reggie Bush / Chris Tyree, right? I mean, that's a huge jump, but the speed is there. And so who knows? But I mean, you go under center if you do that, and Coach Reese doesn't do that. So I get lost, but I do think you're going to see Tyree hopefully have 30 plus catches. And I think that Diggs and Estime might do have a little bit of a timeshare back there. Because he's looked great too. Estime, the limited carries, but he's looked great.
Yeah. It's a great backfield. Lance Taylor left that room in a better position than he found it. All right. Quick housekeeping items as we kind of start to wind down the show. We typically go about an hour, and we're 43 minutes in here. Hit the thumbs up, blueandgold.com. Have that $1 for 1 year premium access deal. Shoot me a tweet at Mike T. Singer if you have any issues with that, any questions. Holler at me, shoot me an email, msinger@blueandgold.com, whatever it takes. We want to get you guys on the site, and so you guys can check out our new home of blueandgold.com. We do have a super chat, and for the while, I stopped sounding the alarms, but I say screw it, Mike. So Daniel says no question. He doesn't have a question for us. The Goolsby Japan football story was worth a donation, so drops us a 10 spot. I really appreciate that, Daniel. And
thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I've got. There's a lot of layers to that Japan trip. I mean, obviously, but some of those aren't.
You also said you had a Jerome Bettis story.
Yeah.
Let's
get to more questions. But so 2003, Notre Dame played at Pittsburgh, University of, and they shared a stadium with the Steelers, and they may still. I don't know.
I think they do.
And Jerome Bettis talked to us, and I was hurt that year, but I traveled. And Jerome Bettis talked to us in the locker room, I think the night before the game, like after a walkthrough, saying whatever, speech about playing hard or whatever. And at the end, as he's kind of wrapping it up, takes a long pause, and he's like, I see all you MFers. He didn't say MFers. He's like, I see all you MFers eyeing me up. He's like, I need you to know. He's like, you cannot take me. He's like, none of y'all can take me. We all started laughing because you're like looking at him. You're like, oh, I could take him. I could tackle him or whatever. He's like, none of you MFers can take me, we just busted out laughing. It was great.
So you're
It's
thinking
great.
of an Oklahoma drill and how you do against Bettis? You think you could have taken him?
Well, because you look at guys, like I spent time with the St. Louis Rams way back when, and you look at like Marshall Faulk with his shirt off at that point in his career. And I remember he didn't even practice. Like he'd be eating a hot dog or something at practice because he was Marshall Faulk. And you're like, dude, he can't be that good. You know what I'm saying? But some of these guys, these football gods, you look at Jerome Bettis, you're like, but because that was fairly close to when he had stepped away from the game. But how do you tackle a guy that's as big around as an ottoman? I mean, he's just a massive person. Like, how do you wrap that guy up?
Dude, I forget about some of these stories you have. It's pretty great. That was a good one. All right,
sure. There's plenty more where that comes from. Yeah, maybe I get on Meat Lead and start sharing them, Mike.
Dude, I'll have my people talk to your people. Dennis dropped to the 10 spot. Great show tonight, guys. Says go Army. Yes, appreciate it. Dennis. All right, we do have a couple more items to get to quickly, Mike, and then we can do a little rapid fire in questions. You had told me you can talk about Isaiah Foskey as literally much as humanly possible. What's on your mind? When you talk about Isaiah Foskey going into this year that kind of feels like an extra year for him. Like he could have entered the NFL draft and been a pick here, first, second day guy. Came back to Notre Dame. What are you expecting from him this season?
Well, help me get this thought out, Mike, but he's a special player in the same way that Kyle Hamilton's a special player. And I just want us to he's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. He will be. He's an exceptional player. And I think that, and maybe it's not a Notre Dame fan thing, Mike, but maybe it's just fandom in general, where it's like, we're always on to the next thing. We're always looking, what about Jordan Botelho, right? It's like, well, you got Isaiah Foskey right here. So I don't want anybody to discount or take for granted how special of a talent he is. And just see what the upcoming season turns into for him. So it's like, and then also couple that with, right now for 2023, we've got the number 1 recruiting class in the country, right? And that may change, but to become a marquee program, to beat the Bamas of the world, the Ohio States, the Clemsons, you know what I'm talking about. You have to start having some of those first-round draft picks. So he's a no-brainer first-round draft pick. But I think Isaiah Foskey could leave here like as an all-time great. All-time great. And I just think it's important. So you've got Hamilton. We'll see how it shakes out with him in the draft. And then you've got Foskey, and then who's like the next one, right? And then you kind of start that trend, and that bleeds into recruiting. And I just, like I said, just don't take the kid for granted. He's a really, 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 really special player.
Let's talk a little linebackers, Mike. Do you have like a unit for Mike, Will, and Rover that you would like to see? Like, what would be your starting group if you could project one right now? What you would like the best?
So I'll play along. So we're not rotating anybody.
Sure.
We're not rotating. Like this is the linebacker core. Bauer's your Mike, Colley's your Will, and Sneed's your Rover. That's dream scenario. So if you're going to rotate people, go ahead.
Sneed is a true frosh.
He's the only, and we were talking about this prior to going on air, in terms of the body type, genotype, phenotype, I don't know what they mean, archetype, like he is a Rover. He is a Rover. Long, fluid. He's going to have a lot to learn, and that's going to be the thing. So I think they're going to play him as a true freshman. They almost have to, especially with recruiting. Like, we sign a 5-star kid and then he sits on the bench. That's not good for branding and recruiting. He's going to play. I think they'll use him situationally as he can rush. I think he can be an edge rusher. I really do. Blitz him and or just be like, it's 3rd and 9, go in and lock up the tight end. just give him a very simple responsibility. And before we got Snead, Collie was the next best thing. And I told you, everybody like, oh, you're like, yeah, he's going to be a rover. No, he ain't a rover. He grew into a will. That kid's got crazy genetics, just in terms of the ability to put on muscle and pack on size. So he is a modern day will linebacker. I don't care that he's a little bit on the shorter side. That's what's in vogue for the position. And then, Marist is an interesting one. I think people have fallen in love with Marist, and I think people like the idea of what he could be. But the last time we saw Marist playing, you can see it, right? You could see the fluidity, you could see the violence, but he had a lot to learn. I mean, he was a bit of a liability the last time that he got consistent reps in terms of like just making mistakes and poor eye discipline. So he's had another year to mature, step away from the game, dealing with injury. So hopefully there's some potential there. But all these pieces they seem to be interchangeable, whether it's like, I think, go ahead.
What about Bertrand?
Bertrand played his ass off and played so much football that the coaches know what they have with him. And he's a little bit limited, man. And I think that got exposed and sort of got brought to the surface during the bowl game. So he can play a Mike. He's not athletic enough to play Will. I think he could be a first and second down thumper as a Mike. I know he takes football real seriously. But, I mean, if we're trying to go to the next level and we're trying to be elite, he's not the athlete that you want. He plays his ass off. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think he'd be an incredible like fullback or something like that, but he's like a slightly more athletic Drew White.
Okay.
He's just they're some of these kids, they get like JD's so focused on training and nutrition and all this, they get too bound up in it muscle wise, and it takes away from their ability to actually play the game. So Marist is going to be fun to watch. Kali's going to be fun to watch. See what becomes of that rover, but there's like, the conversation with rover Mike is always like, he could play rover, and it's like Snead, to me, it's just like it's a straight connection. Like he is a rover. It's not like, he might be able to play rover. So
okay.
Anyway,
we did have one more thing we want to talk about. I think we're going to hold this for our next time. We can talk about.
Let's get to some questions.
Yeah, we can talk about Tyler Buckner another time.
Okay.
We'll get into Tyler Buckner expectations in a show sometime next month. All right, yeah, I did say queue up a few questions for you, Mike. I think we got some good ones here. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up, subscribe, do all that crap. Appreciate it. Michael Park says, Goolsby, why did you wear 41?
Oh, great question. So growing up, Michael Parks, I was a big diehard Barry Sanders fan. Diehard. Like I would cut out his clippings in the newspaper and stuff. And I wrote so many like papers about him in grade school that like the teachers talked to my parents. They're like, because they give you like assignments to write about like your summer, and somehow I'd start talking about Barry Sanders. I was obsessed with Barry Sanders. So I wanted to wear number 20 when I went into high school. I played defensive end as a true freshman. First time playing football, I wore number 64. They moved me up to varsity next year as a 14-year-old. So I'm a sophomore playing varsity. I'm the low man on the totem pole, so I get last pick of jerseys. And I got 20 there, and I got number 41 were basically my two options. And I picked up 20, and I walked all the way upstairs. And I was like, nah. And I went back down there, and I put it back, and I took 41. I couldn't tell you, but I was just like, I don't want to wear 20. I was like, I wanted to wear 41.
You didn't want to make.
And I thought that it was a great number. In hindsight, it was a great number because 4, Mike, is your power number. 1's kind of your speed number. Very underrated number, 41.
You didn't want to make Sanders look bad. I get it.
Yeah, it's fair.
That
low key, better.
Like low key, it could be a Mike Goolsby movie where I feel like that's a great. You got the clippings of Goolsby watching Barry Sanders on TV, and then he throws down the 20 jersey and goes and picks up 41. I like it.
Well, I'll say this, and I tell this to all the kids that I interact with, and anybody watching at home. Like, I consider myself like super fortunate. Like when I grew up as a kid, like I got to watch. I mean, I was in the throes of like Michael Jordan's prime. Like I got to see Mike Tyson. I got to see Barry Sanders. Like I don't know if kids have those sports idols anymore. I really don't. I don't know. There's so much content out there, like Snapchat, Instagram, all this crap, TikTok. It's like, do these kids really watch sports anymore? Like I grew up without cable television, watching like VHS tapes of like Larry Bird, a basketball legend, and it was super formative. And I just think that's something that kids should watch more sports and really, if you say you love football, then why don't you watch it? You know what I mean? Anyway,
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. Yes, so you were a 90s kid, right?
yes.
That was your teenage years, right? Late 90s? Yeah.
I was born in 82. So, but yeah, I mean, I remember I hated Emmitt Smith because he had the great offensive line. And it was like Barry Sanders had a terrible offensive line. I was just such a big fan of how he handled himself. He never really had any endorsement deals. I know Nike made a shoe for him, but I just was a big, 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 big Barry Sanders fan. I'd love to meet the guy one day.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking about me growing up. It was Michael Vick. Hated Michael Vick. Grew up in Atlanta. And all my buddies were Michael Vick fans. And meanwhile, I was a suffering Dolphins fan. Still am. It sucks. Try being a Dolphins fan the year after Marino retires. That's been my life. It's.
But you grew up in Florida, right?
I bounced. This is my third time living in Atlanta. And I lived in Florida 3 times. So
Okay. So when did you? Because I thought you told me you grew up playing like tennis and badminton and stuff. When did you get into football?
I mean, I always liked football as a kid, but I didn't start playing organized until high school. And first day I ever put on pads was third practice of freshman year, and because
that was the last day you put them on.
No, probably should have been. I got ran over Oklahoma drill by a kid, about. Heck, I was about 6'1", 130, but that kid was probably about 5'10", 100 pounds, and he ran me over. So I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, I full disclosure, I went home from my first day of hitting in tears, and I was like, I'm gonna wrestle. And my dad told me to not be a what. He's like, quit being a what. It was just I didn't take to contact initially like a lot of kids do. It took me probably a year to get accustomed to hitting people and starting to like it. So
yeah,
we share that.
I like flexible. I played receiver. You wouldn't, if you met me now, you'd be like, Mike, you're a good guard back in the day. No, I was a receiver. Okay. Joe says, notable alumni from your high school to Notre Dame. I think we can all think of one off the top of our head other than you, Mike. Any answer here?
Well, yeah, obviously, Rudy Rudiger, Daniel
that's
Rudiger.
A notable one.
And Tom Thayer is another one. So he was an offensive lineman, won a Super Bowl with the 85 Bears. Somebody's going to kill me if I forget. There was a baseball player, but I think that's it as far as football. I think there was a McShane, like maybe a Kevin McShane, like in the 80s that went over there. But yeah, it's definitely Joliet Catholic is like a smaller version of Notre Dame in terms of the tradition and all that kind of accompanies that.
See if I can get our crack staff on this. Do have another question for you in just a second, Mike. From Brian. Has Coach Freeman reached out to you?
No. I don't think Coach Freeman knows who I am.
That'll change. It'll change. Especially if you go over there on campus. Mike, have you ever met Wes Pritchett?
No, but I have seen enough of on some of these like YouTube videos and interviews and stuff. Like I almost feel like I know the guy. Like I haven't ever shook his hand, but I feel like we could become fast friends.
All right, the crack staff has confirmed Kevin McShane, I believe, graduated from Notre Dame in 1990 and
Okay.
went to Joliet Catholic. I found an article on the web from 1985 written on McShane
Well done.
from when he was in high school. All right, Mike, who do you think Notre Dame's leader in tackles will be this upcoming season?
Oh, I like that. So I would say Kali. Yeah, that's
I
my
like it.
guess. I mean, if it was Bertrand last year, just based off of effort, you got a much better athlete, and I just feel like you've watched Cincinnati schemes, like they've really, I mean, it's designed to let those guys go run around. So it ought to be Kali.
Drunk Vigo says the Dolphins still have fans. They got one at least. Yeah, it's like I said, it's been tough as a Dolphins fan. Donnie says so. Marist is not ready, but Snead is. I'm guessing this was a few minutes ago when you were talking about the linebackers. I don't know if you particularly said that Marist wasn't ready, but any thoughts here, Mike?
And I bounce around, so I apologize if it didn't come across. So when I saw Marist play last prior to his injury, he wasn't ready to be a full-time starter and that. Like, and I said on one of our podcasts, like he was a liability in terms of like the overall scheme because you didn't know what he was doing, kind of out of control, going the wrong directions. But that kind of ferociousness and the velocity that he plays and the physicality was very intriguing. But I do feel like Notre Dame fandom, I feel like a lot of folks have already penciled in Maris as the starter at will. And I think that they've fallen in love with Snead and we almost forgot about Kali. So that competition between Marist and Kali, and I mean, I could see for that will spot will be really intriguing, but I could see Marist sliding inside and playing Mike on third down and take Bauer out of the game. I mean, there's a lot of the types of body types. We're recruiting kids that are fast, they're long, they're all 6'1", 6'2" and they're all 215 to 230 and you can do a lot of different things with them, a lot of multiplicity, and that's really the strength of Freeman's defense. And the more body types that we bring in like that, Mike, gosh darn it, dude, we can leave Isaiah Foskey's hand on the ground, and just let that guy go play himself into being a top 5 pick.
Yeah,
Stop dropping in coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
right, hopefully that clears that up.
Yeah. All right, we're over an hour, dude. And any closing
right.
thoughts before we sign off?
Not necessarily, no.
We'll have to do this again.
Yeah. That's about it.
We'll record our next one after people beat down my door to have you back on. So yeah, but Goolsby will go back to it's basically like our magazine, once a month in the off season and weekly during the football season. That's the Blue and Gold Illustrated magazine. That's also when we'll have Mike Goolsby on our YouTube shows.
Great.
All right.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
I'm Mike Singer. He's Mike Goolsby. It's been the Mike Goolsby Show. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, podcast, go to the site, all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys, and we will catch you next time.